questions as well for the town halls. And again, thank you. Thank you for being here. I think we're all getting used to Zoom meetings or whatever the cases may be with other platform you're using, but we are getting better at this, and it did work out very well last night. And we hope to have another good town hall and hopefully answer your questions that you may have today as well. The agenda. First part's going to be an introduction from me, and then we're going to go into a high-level overview presentation of what you have already received in the Return to Learn plan. And we'll talk about some specific areas of that. We will not be going and reading the Return to Learn plan that was sent to you line by line. I always enjoy when I've read something that someone reads it to me from a PowerPoint. Actually, I don't. So we will be talking about some of the big portions. And really, at the end, we really want to make as much time as we can for make sure we get all of our questions answered that you may have. The norms for the chat today for the town hall is that everybody came in as muted, just so you understand, and that if you have questions, you can put it in the chat bar. And this worked very well last night. I think we ended up having 73 questions that we did get through. And if you put those in the chat bar, they will be answered at the end of the presentation when we open up for Q&A in the order that they were received. If you are someone that is struggling to get into the chat room, or you can't put the chat in there, or you don't want to type out your entire question, you can simply put your name in the text in the chat bar if you'd rather speak. And then what will happen is we'll call your name. Matt Shank, who's facilitating this town hall, will say your name and unmute you if you'd rather speak to your question. And then we will answer it that way as well. So we will go ahead and get started. Again, I want to say thank you for being here. And I also want to say thank yous for getting to this point. If you are someone's wondering what's been happening all summer, we started our Return to Learn planning really in May with an executive committee. And June 30th, the governor sent out the Return School Roadmap, which we did have some insight into what some of those portions would be. And I really want to say thank you for our entire staff, especially our executive committee and administrative team that's been meeting daily for hours on end to process many different plans, ideas, and also making sure that we can abide by the Return to Learn protocols set forth, also the CDC guidelines. And it seems like we have different guidelines just about every day. As a matter of fact, an executive order came out yesterday afternoon on mask wearing for children. If you saw that, we have not had a chance to vet that and see how that impacts us completely in schools yet. We kind of let legal interpret those and then make a recommendation to schools. So these things are constantly changing. I also want to thank, we had an advisory committee. I want to thank our PEA, PEAO, and all other organizations for their collaboration and participation in this. One thing I can tell you is that the level of collaboration here, it has been amazing, like it always has been. Can I get a thumbs up from a couple people if they can hear me? Okay. I also want to thank the board for their support and guidance throughout this. We have a fantastic Board of Education here in Parchment, and really want to do what's right for our children and our staff. This is complicated. It's probably the most difficult undertaking that all of us will have in our careers. I know that when you see the final product of a plan, a lot of people would say, why can't we just go back to school in full? What's going on? This school went virtual. This one's doing this. This one's doing this. We have local control in Michigan. And what I can say is that if you want to get just a little snippet or insight into some of the challenges we face with bringing children back in a non-traditional setting, take a look at the governor's Return to School Roadmap and the CDC guideline. It is very complicated. And let me state this unequivocally. If I ever believe we cannot meet the standards set forth in the governor's roadmap, the CDC, and guidance of local health department, we will go 100% remote instruction until things are better. This is uneasy for parents, for staff, for everybody else. But this year will be a year that we need to be nimble. What I mean by nimble is that we could go through periods if we go back to phase 3 in the governor's return plan. Economic development means that there's no face-to-face instruction. We have to go online and everybody's at home. Furthermore, we're in phase 4 currently, and we don't know if we will remain in phase 4. If we go to phase 5, that means that we've mitigated the spread of COVID-19 and things are looking really good. And when we go to phase 5, we will phase into a 5-day face-to-face, more traditional schedule, again, phasing into that. And again, especially from a parent perspective, myself included, that it's tough to be nimble with our schedules in response to what our children's schedules are. We could move between modalities multiple times throughout the year. Furthermore, these could be simultaneously happening with one another, exclusively involved, and everywhere in between. I don't really say this is a hypothetical or a theoretical situation. I see this as a given that we will be moving, and that's every school district in the state of Michigan. Okay, not just Parchman. We're going to make these decisions, but it will happen. And so our organization needs to plan for a multitude of scenarios. It needs to be able to pivot on a dime. What I'm probably most proud of is our work around different phases and how we get in between them. This is very difficult to prepare for. Over 250 staff, 1,600 plus students, and 6 buildings. So that's the work we've been doing. This is only our phase 4 start to the year plan. I talked about executive orders and how they're constantly changing or things change. For example, like I said, you can look up the executive order then that came through yesterday. I struggle to remember exactly what the executive orders are, but an executive order 2020-164 is the new executive order pertaining to children, mask wearing, and a number of other things. I also want to think about how complex this is with the fact that Major League, just throw this out there. We have to worry about our local area, but I'm a big Cubs fan. Love the Chicago Cubs. And I love Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball made it one weekend. They didn't even make it one weekend. So it's complicated. Also, the NBA, they rented out the Magic Kingdom to create a bubble. And that's complicated. We don't have the resources of the NBA, the Major League Baseball, other things. So to just say that it's complicated, that's just to put that into that portion. And you can go online anytime and find a counterpoint. I just want to bring to light that for every point you can find, there's a counterpoint right now. For every data point, there seems to be a countering data point. So to navigate these, we have to be informed, but also be nimble. We take our guidance from the Kalamazoo County Health Department. They are working with us. We have an epidemiological update weekly on the rate of transmission, the percent positivity, where the case trends are coming. And those are really what we're going to lean on throughout this is what's happening right here. What's happening in Florida doesn't necessarily need to impact what's happening in Kalamazoo. And so we do have an epidemiologist, Mary Franks, who meets with us every week as superintendents to advise, and also Jim Rutherford and Penny Bourne, who go through all of the data with us in the health department and advise us. Again, we are at the mercy of where this virus goes. As we've seen, it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen, and that's our best laid plans today could change tomorrow, could change next week. So we just have to understand that. We have a lot of things that are out of our control. I do want to point out that politics have also come into play with school reopening. Good, bad, or indifferent, it has been politicized. The federal government, we do not know if we're going to receive coronavirus aid coming up here because they adjourned. They left the Capitol. Also, just so you know, the state yesterday was supposed to be taking up in the Senate rules related to and regulations for reopening schools. If you saw, they had a senator who tested positive for COVID, so they canceled all their sessions. And we still don't have concrete answers on school reopening, but we know as professionals who are here for a service, as parents, that we really need to have a well-formulated plan to inform what we're going to do. We can't wait for the final answers on that. Okay. I want to go into one other portion, just very clearly. There are no right answers in any of this. Many will state our plan is too little. Many will state our plan is too much. We have put in countless hours to get to this point, and this is our recommendation. We did bring this to the board for initial, should we keep pursuing this, on Monday night, and did a presentation. I can say that I am not comfortable, nor would I support a plan that begins with a full in-school 5-day face-to-face schedule. The stakes are too high. Will we get there? I certainly hope so. We will move K3 there first when we're able, and then start really easing into this. Anyone that thinks it's simple, bring the kids back, they're fine. You need to pay attention to the limitations and standards we need to meet. I also do think that it's naive to think that we have been quarantined and haven't been in large gatherings to just rip the Band-Aid off and say, okay, we're coming back in that capacity. We need to ease into this. Children need to ease into this. Staff need to ease into this. We all need to take this slow to go far. We believe our plan has the possibility or the best opportunity for sustainability throughout the year. The last thing we want is to have different things within our own institution and organization. And we also believe very concretely that we have a lot of teaching to do with children as they come back with the new policies and procedures. The school that children left in March, any school, it will look and feel nothing like the school that they left in March. I just want to be very clear with that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Again, we need to ease into it. We haven't been close to normal for over 6 months. To expect everybody to come back and know exactly how to function in this, I think is not a viable option. So I just want to get that on the table. I would not support a recommendation to start the year with a full 5-day-a-week face-to-face schedule. And I think our data supported that in our surveys. Just so you know, the county's all over the place. We have school districts that just sent out one of their first surveys to see which direction they wanted to go this week. We have others who have announced a full virtual plan. We have others that have announced a kind of hybrid plan. We have others that have announced a attempt to go 5 days a week. We have been pretty firm in our planning that we wanted to have social distancing and make sure that we can control as much as we can control in our environment to begin the school year. And we can, as we look at this, also pay credence to the fact that we have been collaborative with our plan. We want to make sure that people's voices are heard, and also that we can make sure that we're having big protocols for student and staff safety. I did talk about phases. but phases 1 through 3 in the governor's economic reopening plan are shut down. Think March, April that we're shut down, meaning that there's no person instruction for schools. Phase 4 is where we're in right now, which is definitely the most complicated for school reopening. Phase 5 would mean that the virus transmission is decreasing. We've contained it. And phase 5, like we said, we would be transitioning right into transitioning to a 5-day-a-week face-to-face. That means that there's no number. They don't say, okay, if your percent positivity is under 2, you can do that. Now that would be helpful, but that's not how it's laid out. And then phase 6 is basically there's a vaccine, there's not spreading, and we're into what we knew before March. I don't think that it would ever say that we're going to be phase 6 in this school year. It would be great to think that. I think a pipe dream for the school year would be a phase 5 at some point. And also a real opportunity or possibility would be that we could be in phase 3 in some point throughout the school year. I want to be very concrete. Obviously we have concerns as cold and flu season comes, and not even having COVID spread, but not being able to tell which is flu or cold and which one's COVID. And that's where hospital occupancy, other things will come into play with what the governor and the local health departments decide. We did ask for August 11th, a choice form submission of what you want your children to do. That is very simple. It's because we need to then be able to go into groupings. We can't do that until we know how many children are choosing to do remote or KVIC. That'll take down our numbers, and then we can start to see, okay, where are our groups? And if you choose KVIC, you will have someone reaching out to you to get enrollment information. If you choose the remote option, which we'll talk about, then you will be contacted by somebody on how to enroll for that. And then same thing for a hybrid. You will be contacted with the days that you will be with. And then from there, just so you know, we need to also have transportation. So in our choice form, you'll see it has all these staggered layers, like if you choose hybrid, are you needing transportation? I will say that if you're a parent that can transport your child, it would be greatly beneficial to the district. Transportation is quite an undertaking that we'll talk about with social distancing requirements and other portions, and how we need to disinfect the buses between runs. So I'll talk about that, but you understand that that's a thing that we need to know right up front to make our plans for that. So I'm going to go through our presentation, and it will pop. Your screen will be the presentation. I'll go through it again. I do not want to read this to everybody because hopefully you've taken the time to look through it, but I will highlight some portions. And then after that, I think people really just want to have questions. And then we will go into the questions to make sure we have time. Okay. First of all, as we looked at our surveys, and you probably were like, okay, I've had like 3 surveys, but when we looked at option of 5-day face-to-face learning, 48% said, yes, I feel comfortable sending my child back to that environment. And that means that we could not, because of the space in the classes, we could not guarantee social distancing. We could not guarantee a lot of things in that. 48% said yes to a 5-day face-to-face learning. We had high interest in virtual learning platforms. And then hybrid learning, you see, we jumped up to 68.5% of families felt comfortable sending their children back to a hybrid, which we defined in the survey, which led us to making data-informed decisions. You're good. Go ahead. All right. Safety first mindset. Frequent hand washing by student, staff, and custodial team will actually have education surrounding this. High contact areas and surfaces cleaned frequently. We have doubled our GRBS staff. So if we were usually a place that has 1 custodian during the day, we're looking at having 2, one that's going to be just doing touch point disinfecting, or they can share on these. But we'll have standard protocols and procedures that need to be met every single day with a check and balance system. Hand sanitizer stations, we have those all ordered and they're in. So then any common areas, we're going into a classroom, you have sanitizer, we'll also have frequent hand washing. Also for the disinfectants, just so you know, we will publish the use of disinfectants that are being used in the school on our school website for anybody that has concerns on what disinfectants are being used. That will be obviously published before the start of the school year. And so that if anybody wants to reference what the disinfectants being used are, can do that. Cafeteria common areas, breakfast and lunch will be with your homeroom for K5. So if you just real quickly think about a K5 student will come to one classroom and they will be there for the day. And that's very different. We will have specials teachers that will be coming to the class. So that is a pretty big variance and difference there. Social distancing at lunch for 612. And we're looking at cohorting the middle school. But we really think that as children get older, we'll be monitoring it. But then we're going to actually take seats off of the table so like nobody can physically sit there and be able to have that. And also more lunch periods to allow for fewer children in the areas. We are looking at food distribution for hybrid and parchment remote learning so that families that need that can come up and pick up, or we'll have stations around the district to be able to still have breakfast and lunch for families. Modified traffic patterns in common areas. I just want, this is the one that most people go, but if you think about all the furniture in the commons, you know, kids at the high school really love to hang out in the commons. That the furniture is going to be gone and there's not going to be spots to congregate. If you've ever seen a middle school in the morning, when children get to school, there will not be any children in the common areas because that's usually about 300 kids hanging out in the cafeteria and the lobby and library. Children will be going directly to places so we don't have congregation. We'll have signage everywhere and obviously age level appropriate to decrease areas of congestion. Masks, students and staff and students must wear face masks. All students must wear face masks at all times except for eating or drinking. That's 612. That's our staff does. Pre-K through 12 students and staff in hallways and common areas. And 612 are face masks all day, the same as staff, except for eating and drinking. K5 students in common areas and strongly recommended in classrooms. This is again one of those EOs, executive orders, that comes out that's already going to change this. We need to process it, but it could be that K5 students need to wear masks all day, just like everybody else. Now, we need to process that because does this executive order exclude schools or does it go to schools? We really need to vet that, and we will be communicating that. Preventative mitigation, self-assessments of symptoms daily at home by students and staff. One of the big things are our children going to be getting their temperature taken. We have talked to the health department about that. They do not advise that we temperature check all children coming into the buildings. When they look at that, first of all, asymptomatic carriers of COVID sometimes, especially children, don't show a fever. Also, what we're doing is taking a lot of staff and putting kids in a line to do so. We are going to be asking pretty heavily that students, parents fill out a health screening form for the week for their children so we can contact trace or no. And this is a big one, limited building access for visitors and volunteers. That means that parents, visitors, volunteers are not allowed into the buildings except for extenuating circumstances. That is part of the governor's roadmap. That is so that we don't have cross-contamination. And also, we want to keep our office areas as sterile as possible for our employees. And also knowing that we don't want to cross-contaminate any of our buildings. We'll have deep cleaning days on Wednesdays when we're off. And one thing that the Portsmouth School District does have is we have touchless bottle filling stations where you can put your water bottle in and it fills it up. All drinking fountains will be kept so that children don't go up, put their mouth on the drinking fountain. So children will be bringing a water bottle to school. We'll ask for that. And again, those touchless bottle filling stations that are filtered, they say are a great option for this dilemma in schools. If you don't have those in schools, you're capping the drinking fountains and bringing in, I don't know, we have that settled. Transportation, real quick, go run. Transportation, masks are going to be required to stay on the bus at all times. That's pre-K through 12. Hand sanitizer, we have them mounted right on the entrance to the bus. Sanitize your hands, keep your mask on. 2 students per seat of the same family. We will be distancing children on the bus as well to the best of our ability. And a big one is arrival and dismissal times are staggered. We have to disinfect the buses between routes. We are a double run district, meaning we pick up secondary children and then we go out and pick up elementary children. We need to disinfect the buses in between routes. And we have made the decision that we will, if you didn't know this, our high school, we participate in the hub run where we go out, we go to Loy Norix and then pick up children from across the county and then take them to EFE, EFA programs. We have made the decision that the students that we will be transporting Parchment students only, no hub run. Okay, next. Okay, I'll let you go through this, but real quick, hybrid. We're just trying to make some definitions here because it's difficult. A hybrid learning plan means that we're in school half time, which you know, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off, Thursday, Friday. Remote learning, K-5 would be 100% virtual with Parchment teachers and Parchment curriculum. For the Parchment remote learning, 6-12 would be 100% virtual learning platform with certified teachers, not necessarily Parchment teachers, that follows your required learning path from Parchment, meaning your class schedule will be mirrored on your online. You will also have a mentor or coach from the school district that would be alongside you with those. And in K-5 environment, we're trying to make it a Parchment teacher that would stay in the same scope and sequence as the in-person classroom. So when we talk about face-to-face learning for phase 5, all students return for in-person instruction full-time. And when we say the word at home, it means students will be at home on the days they're not in school with hybrid plan. And the KVIC learning, that is a year-long commitment, and it's a virtual platform provided through the county. And that could be any school, any teacher from all over the county that you would be engaged with there. And it's mostly asynchronous. So you've probably looked at asynchronous. Synchronous is no asynchronous is work independently, and synchronous is live teaching. Okay. So our learning options that's presented would be the hybrid, which most people, okay, that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off day, Thursday, Friday. The question is, okay, what does my child do on the off days? Parchment remote learning, we talked about that, but it'd be 100% virtual. You're at home. But for K-5, you would have a Parchment teacher, and 6-12, you would have a mentor and approved Parchment curriculum. KVIC is the countywide program, and that is a year-long commitment. If you're someone that's saying, I know that until this thing's gone, I don't want to have not even a chance for face-to-face, then that would be an option for you. It would have consistency and be able to take that throughout the year. Okay. And this is one that you've probably looked at quite in depth. You've probably looked at this. What does hybrid learning look like? However, I just want to pay special attention to the staggered arrival and dismissal times. You'll see that some of our school day times need to change. And that goes back to the reason we need to go back after the secondary run, go back and disinfect the bus. We have a Clorox 360 machine. We'll be spraying down the bus, go on there, and it has to have at least a 10 to 15 minute dry time after it's done. So where we used to hit the road right after we dropped off high school, middle school, and then go on our elementary runs, now we need to go back to the bus garage, disinfect the bus, and then get on the road. So that needs to have a delay, and that is a requirement of the return to learn plan, as the governor had put, and the CDC recommendations. So we'll see that we have pay special attention. We have arrival for people that are dropping off, and then we have bus times, and you'll see they're different. That's so that when children come, we do not have a congregation. I want you to think about at maybe Central Elementary, where kids come here and they play on the playground before they come in, the bell rings, they all line up for their classes. That is not going to happen. We're going to stagger arrivals as best as we can and make sure that they have distancing, and they will be entering their classroom from the exterior doors. Okay, so that's much different. I know my son, his favorite part of the school day, he wanted to be the first one on the playground in the morning. And that's like literally his favorite thing to do. And that when I'm talking to him about that, I can tell you, just, I'm very transparent. My son said, I don't want to go to school then. I'm like, buddy, you're probably, you're going to school. But that won't be an option. Recess will be, but not the congregation. And you'll see that there's specific times for drop off and pick up walkers. We're going to stagger those so that we don't have congregation. Okay, thank you. Okay, we talked about this quite a bit, but if you want to take a look at it, or if you have questions, I'll go right through it again. I don't want to read it. But the big difference between Parchment Remote Learning and KVIC is that this is a trimester commitment that you can, if I'm someone that says, I'm not sure about how things are going, I want to see how it plays out, but I want the option to move back. This is the option that allows you at the trimesters to come and go, where the KVIC option is a year-long commitment. Okay, thank you. And KVIC, if you wanted more information on KVIC for the year-long program, there is a link in there. There's also, it goes directly to a website that shows you that. For K5, it is Lincoln Learning for KVIC. And at 612, it's Michigan Virtual Curriculum. And for our curriculum for 612, again, our K5 for remote would be through Google Classroom, where you're engaged with a lot of synchronous learning. And 612, sorry, I'm back to remote. So for that, we would be synchronous, and 612 would be mainly asynchronous. And then if you go to KVIC, KVIC would be pretty much all asynchronous, meaning work at home, that is with, again, certified teachers, but that is a big difference. Okay. So how do we put this, because it was, we're sitting there going, okay, this is confusing, but this is something you should really, as a parent, when you're thinking about your options, this is a helpful slide. Again, hybrid, yes, I want face-to-face, and I really know that what the school district, what phases the school district goes through, we're going to go with it. Parchment Remote Learning, again, is at home and with the ability to transfer at the trimester. And KVIC is a year-long commitment. Okay. With special populations, you can read through all of this, but just know that whatever option you choose, the Parchment School District, Special Education, IEP, 504, SST, English language learners, or elementary reading intervention will all come from the Parchment School District. So you would still have those supports. If you haven't done this yet, we have an app. So you can actually go to the App Store and download the app to increase communication. And actually, it's probably going to render our website pretty much obsolete. And in the app, we're still working on getting everything formulated. But you can just go in here and see the news section, the live feed, everything that's coming from the district. You can also choose to get alerts. We've heard loud and clear, and we agree that we really hammered the school messenger system this spring, and people stopped answering the phone because we think it's just a robocall coming from the school. This communication document lets you know that we will be doing certain things with certain different methodology. So we're going to really only use phone call for the school messenger in the case of emergency. That you need to know this now, not informational, because we've heard loud and clear, and I agree. I'm guilty too of saying, okay, it's coming from that number, it must all go to voicemail. This is huge this year, because if your child is sick in the school, we really need you to come and get them. We need to have an isolation at the school, away from everything else. And really, if your child is sick, we do need you to get there ASAP. We've always, in the past, we do this, say, hey, I think they're okay. Let's have them stick it out. I got a big meeting at work today. I'm guilty of that. They don't want to be there. And we really work with kids to say, yep, come on, you can do it. With the threat of COVID, especially as we come back, we really need you to come get your children. Okay. All right. This is where the big questions come in. COVID-19 symptoms and positive case response. What do you do if a child or somebody has a positive COVID-19 case? There are 6 scenarios in this document. If you have not had a chance and you have major questions about how it's going to go, we lean on the health department with internal policies. I will just say, I think I saw a couple questions coming up about this, so we're going to just not open. If you want to do that, please feel free. This is the policy and procedures we're following. Just know a couple big things. Number one is that if there is a positive COVID case in the school, you will be alerted. Okay? You will be alerted. There is a policy that states that anybody who was within the COVID-19, so somebody has COVID-19, first of all, you will not know who that person is. That's frustrating, but we will not release any personal identifiable information about a person who's test positive for COVID-19, whether that be staff or student. We can't and we won't. The health department will lead contact tracing. The CDC guidelines, the governor's return to school roadmap, all state that anybody that was within 6 feet of that person for more than 15 minutes would be considered a close contact. So with our plan, in theory, if a child in a class tests positive for COVID-19, there would be no individual in that classroom that would be within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. That's a policy. Now, reactions are going to be different than policies. Nobody is naive enough to think that when a COVID letter comes home, people are going to be comfortable and not want to know how is my child? Do they need a negative test? Again, we lean on the health department for that. But again, reactions and policies to a policy, reactions to a policy are different things. I have a very good advisor in my house that is the love of my life, that tells me about all these situations every day. And I agree with her. But that is the contact tracing portion for this. Now, I have a concern with this situation. A child is sick at school, parents come pick up, they have COVID symptoms. We need to get better testing, because if it takes 7 days to get the results back, and then we've been in a situation where children have been in school and we can't say if they have a COVID or not, then we come back and we get the confirmation that the child was, or whoever, positive for COVID, but we're many days out from the symptoms. That's where in this health department guideline, it walks through that, but that is obviously a concern of ours. We would want some rapid response testing to know concretely. Most likely, we will hear about a COVID case outside of the school day. And again, we had the question last night of if I'm in remote, or if I'm in KVIC, or if I'm in the school, will we be alerted if we're not in the hybrid? Yes, you will. Our communications will come to families like they normally do. If you're a Parchment family, you will get the communication. And there will be a lot of questions on this, and I want to be able to answer those specifically as we go through. Okay, we do have FAQs. Again, these are rolling on our website. and they will be updated after this one. We updated them after last night's. So we take the questions and we start popping them into a rolling FAQ so that if you ever need this, go right to the website and look for the FAQ document, and that can help you quite a bit. Okay, big question is about before and after and daycare for the days my child is not in school. We are working to scale up our school age supervision on off days. We do not have a concrete answer on that at this point. I wish we did, but again, we need to scale up. We have posted and are looking to scale up on days that children are not in school. If you want to pop down, but we will have before and after school care. But again, those slots are limited, and we want to make sure that we cohort in a similar manner than we are in the classroom. Okay, you can go to the next one. What we've set up, and we've had a lot of emails, is questions@parchmentschools.org. If you email questions@parchmentschools.org, you will get a response right away and to let you know where your email is being directed if it can't be answered by the person that's facilitating the questions email. And then we're working to get an ASAP as soon as possible or within 24 hours an answer to your question when it's submitted at questions@parchmentschools.org. And the complete the choice form, that is something that we have asked, but that's also on the website. It's in the Return to Learn plan that's in there again. And the question comes up, if I make my choice on the 11th, and is that a final decision? We do need that information to be able to appropriately schedule and staff our buildings. However, we're going to work with families on an individual basis like we always do. That's one thing you're going to get with the Parchment School District is an individual, you always will, an individual touch, a relationship, and we will work with families on what their needs are. Okay. We went through that relatively quickly, again, wanting to make sure we have time for questions and answers. So at this time, we're going to have Matt Schenk, our tech director, will be reading off again in the chat function, and we'll be answering them in the order that they were received.
Yep, so I grabbed a few from the very beginning. First question from Corinne Bradley. Can you please give us an idea of what a day would look like for the full virtual student?
Great question. And Pran, I'm going to speak directly to you as a parent of an elementary age student, and then I'll go from there, okay? If a child chooses to do the Parchment remote and they're in K5, they would be having synchronous, meaning a scheduled time, like a school day with a Parchment teacher. And they would have synchronous and asynchronous time. So they would have that engagement with their teacher in their class, but just through a computer screen is what we want. And then also knowing that we need to have asynchronous work and recordings if that time frame for the school day does not work. For KVIC, that is asynchronous, meaning the year-long commitment for asynchronous would be more work to do that is facilitated by a teacher with less live teaching time. And with the Lincoln Learning K5, it also comes with a consumable packet to go alongside of the work that you're doing online. And we are looking to do that for our elementary students as well, having a consumable packet. It would be, you can't really practice handwriting for a kindergartner or first grader without a packet to do so on. For 6-12, pretty much all options are primarily asynchronous, where children will be working through self-motivated, having a list of things to be able to accomplish with support and facilitation. And again, with the Parchment remote option, you would have a mentor or coach in the Parchment School District that would make sure you're staying on track.
Okay, from Melissa, what about band? Can you do this outside?
Yes, we are looking at our band. We really want to make sure we keep as many extracurricular and co-curricular activities for children, and that's a huge part of our school experience. We are looking at band right now, especially at the high school, being outdoors, and we are looking for clarification from the CDC on woodwinds. It seems that woodwinds are a little more problematic. But if we can keep woodwinds and brass instruments, we will do that, but children will be social distanced outside. The next question comes, what happens in the winter? Well, my stance is that if the more playing we can get in, the more engagement while the weather is good, let's do it, let's run, and let's not take that opportunity away for our children.
Another one from Melissa. When will you stop in-person school?
That will be completely dependent upon the advisement of the health department and the governor. Um, there is a rate out there. I wish, let me just be, I wish that we had a measure that said anything over 4% positivity, you are remote. Between 3 and 4, you're in a hybrid. If you're below 3% positivity rate, you can come back in X amount of time. And below 2, I wish that was the case. That would simplify our lives a lot. That is not how it is, though. And so we, again, take our advice from the epidemiologist, from the health department, and they advise us. I don't have a great answer to that question at all. I'm sorry. I don't think anybody does.
She had a follow-up to that one. I think we kind of touched on this, but I'll let you be the judge of that. Do you measure community spread in terms of Parchment, Kalamazoo County, or by region?
I think it's naive to think that our zip code is very good. Okay, let's just take 49004. I think that's naive. When we look at county data, 49004 looks pretty good. But, 49009 is right across the river, 49048. We have children coming from all over. We have staff coming from all over. When we look at what the epidemiologist tells us, it's Kalamazoo County. They give us the Kalamazoo County data and then the regional data, which includes, so if you look, Berrien County had a huge spike, St. Joe County had a huge spike. Those go into our region's reporting numbers, but it's more important to look at our county. So when we meet with Mary Frank, she's talking about Kalamazoo County and the region.
Okay, and next from Holly Evans, is there a set procedure for if a student or teacher gets it? The whole class stays home for 15 days?
And again, that's something that we use the health department for, that whole form of what happens if there is. I think it's very hard to define because it's situational. We're going to have to be looking at a case, again, like I imparted. What if the test results take 7 days to come back and we confirm a positive and the last time they were in school was 8 days ago? Now, how do we contact trace and do that? And there's also going to be our policy and the reaction to the policy. If a child tests positive for COVID-19, we've seen the lice letter that comes home and people kind of go, oh, okay, what about the COVID letter that comes home? Are parents going to send their child if there was a confirmed COVID case in their school, in their classroom, or even in the district? We will have the policy, but we also need to know that the reaction to the case may also shape that if we only have 2 children that are going to come to school the next day in that class because there was a COVID case, we may make the decision to do remote until we're clear. And again, that's going to be led by the health department. Actually, the communication is going to come from the health department with the school district on these cases. That's how it's going to go.
Okay, next question. And to everyone, I'll just apologize in advance if I mispronounce your name. But this next question is from Rachel Dragoo. If you choose hybrid option, are you locked into that option unless we move back to phase 3?
We would want, looking at the hybrid, we would want to have the trimester doing it. But if you're someone that I hopefully this portion answers that question. Let's say we have a child, we don't know if they're forget COVID, okay? They're not feeling well. They don't want to come to school. Thank you. Because they're not feeling well, we really don't want to take that chance, but they're home for 10 days, for 4 days. We have the ability with our Parchment Remote option to take a child that may be in the hybrid plan that is sick and doesn't come to school. We could pop them into the remote teacher's classroom that's following the same scope and sequence for K-5. And they can do their remote learning from home while they're sick, so they don't fall behind the rest of the class. If I'm guessing this question would ask that we're in a hybrid and we're not comfortable anymore, things are changing, can I go to remote? We would have a mechanism to move to that. But when you choose remote, we would ask that if you are thinking of, that you stay there for the trimester so we can ensure our staffing. Another portion of this, I just want to be very transparent, is that we're having declarations on the 11th. What about the children we don't have declarations for by the 11th that don't fill out the survey? We are pretty much saying that they're going to be in the hybrid learning plan. What if we have an influx of people that want to transfer to the Parchment School District? We're going to be telling people that want to transfer to the Parchment School District that we can't guarantee a spot in the hybrid plan, because our hybrid is there for a reason, to make sure we can distance, to make sure we have enough room to do so. So people that are asking to transfer, they would be given or told that they will start the year with remote learning until we can guarantee a spot if they choose to be face-to-face. We're going to make sure our parents and our families have that opportunity first.
From Holly Evans, will our kids be cleaning their desks during the day, or cleaning is done after they leave?
Both, all, and yes. I would, if anybody can go out and find Clorox wipes at this time, let me know. But what we do have is actually wipes and disinfectant buckets that act the same way from KSS, where a child can grab the wipe, put it in the disinfectant, and then wipe down their table. Now, all of our staff are going, there's going to be a trail of water from the bucket to the desk. Yes, there might be. But we will be cleaning periodically. We're going to put it on part of our actually learning about how we do this. But a child in K-5 would actually be in their spot the whole day without cross mingling, without sharing supplies, no shared objects. 6-12, and again, 6 in the middle school, let me be also clear about something. We need to know the numbers before we know how the schedule will exactly work. We're looking at a cohort model at the middle school as well, where we might be able to have children be in a cohort for the day. The high school is going to be about teaching responsibility to those high school children, because they do need to rotate classes. And when they come in, they will be wiping down their desk, and that will be a lot on the education and how children handle that throughout the day at the high school.
Okay, from Haley, I'm curious about the GSRP program. My daughter is 4, and I'm a little nervous about the Monday-Thursday schedule with no masks entering at cold and flu season. I don't see any other options for that program. If I am too afraid to send her back, will she lose her spot?
That would be a great question to put over to our GSRP staff. I think the governor's executive order made that pretty clear from what I can see yesterday, that there will be mask requirements for GSRP. And let me tell you that GSRP is a federally and state funded program, and the only way it's funded is with that format. For the 4 days a week, there's no remote option or anything for that. But that would be something we need to vet and see. Again, I need to clarify the executive order, but from what I saw, that means that children in GSRP will be wearing masks.
And Haley, we're going to meet with PELC tomorrow or next week early to come up with a fax just for that, for PELC. So be looking for that about Tuesday on the website.
Will children need to wear masks outside? And this is from Sabrina.
If they are distanced, 612, there's pretty much no discretion. I think we'll get some clarification on that. If we're outside, let's say in PE class, we want to make sure there's distancing. I would need to get specifics on that, but it's a question that we've had. If my child goes out to recess, as long as we can keep them distanced, we are going to have mask breaks in K-5 that we do want to make sure we have built in as well.
From Alice Burris, what about cross country and track and field for this school year? Kelly just participated in cross country practice that just ended.
Yep. Right now, our conditioning for athletics is on extracurriculars. We're having band camp. That's going to be a lot different. But we take all of our advice from the MHSAA. So until they tell us, we're going. Am I confident that we'll have a full athletic season this fall? I will just say that we're going to follow the MHSAA guidance on that. And I think it's a fantastic opportunity. I'm so happy to see our committed coaches and children coming out and doing it responsibly. But if there's one sport that I think has a fighting chance in the fall, it might be cross country and some other low risk. There's categories of low, medium, and high risk sports.
From Jessica, if we choose to start remote with option to join in person later, what is the process for that? And then the timing.
So we're going to be sending something out in 3 weeks in advance of the trimester to say, are you wanting to come back to face-to-face or hybrid learning at this point, depending on where we are again. And then we will want to use that time to make sure that we get you in a spot to make sure there's social distancing. I do want to add this is that if you're doing the remote learning K-5, you most likely would be with one teacher for the remote and then transitioning into a new teacher's classroom for the hybrid. Just that's something that you need to be aware of.
From Don Jepkema, my child is in Camsey, wondering how this will work with the schedule.
Everybody's schedule for EFA offsite classes is a go. Camsey, we know right now, will be virtual. It's sounding like Camsey will be virtual. It's sounding like EFE classes will be a grab bag of in-person and virtual, but we're planning on just baselining everything as a virtual class that they're going to participate in, and then working out the logistics later.
Okay. I think that answers this next question from Johanna Penny. My child is in law enforcement, EFE. She's wondering how this will work with the schedule and if there would even be an EFA.
I want to reemphasize something that our school districts have done a ton of planning and preparation around this, and we're still waiting on answers for final decisions on that. Each EFE, EFA program is housed within a different association. So, for example, Kalamazoo Public Schools would host 7 EFEs. And if they're doing fully remote instruction, that would also lend itself to doing fully remote instruction. I am a proponent of working this out. I have floated the idea to the county a couple of weeks ago that perhaps we should think about cohorting schools for EFE, EFA programs, because if we go to law enforcement, Mrs. Penny, and there's children from Comstock, Vicksburg, Kalamazoo Central, and so we Portage, and our child goes to that program, and then they've been in contact with other schools, and we have a COVID case there. How do we contact back to now our school? I would be a firm support of cohorting our EFE, EFA classes, wherein that we can more effectively contact trace in the event of COVID. But that is a lot more information to come.
I have a question from Heidi Koval. Can you please explain a little more about the virtual days for hybrid option and what this looks like? I think you just said asynchronous, and I'm afraid that will look a lot like what it did in March, June this year.
Great question. So on our days, we're looking at 2 options. Again, this is something we really want to empower our teaching staff to do. We have one option of streaming the class into the children that are home. And then they can partner with someone that's in the class to be able to do the work on their off days. It would be mainly asynchronous work, but what we're going to do is have the 2 days of heavy instruction. Wednesdays would be a day for a small group. And then when that teacher is teaching in the classroom and there's children out, we're looking at doing practice of what happened in the classroom those 2 days. That is a definite fear that I hear, Heidi and everybody. And I can tell you that what we're going to be doing with our remote instruction will look significantly different and much improved from the spring. But yes, it would be a mainly asynchronous work day if we do not stream the class directly to the children at home.
Next question from Heidi Koval. I assume the choice is per student and not per family.
Absolutely. And that's why you need to fill out the form for each one of your children. And so I can tell you that you may have, I won't say all your kids' names, but you could have one that's doing, has these programs and say, why would you go to school for 1 hour per day? Let's just do that in a remote setting. Another one that really wants to socialize and be around their friends as much as possible that says, I'll take 5 days if you give it to me. And then you may have another one that's younger So those would all be decisions that would be based on that. Our plan, very honestly, in my own household, is that, again, that's going to be my choices. I saw one of them says, will you be sending your child back face to face? That's my decision. That's my decision as a parent. And that'll be something that has with my wife. What we plan on doing this weekend, I do feel confident and safe with my children coming back to school. I will say that, and I really want them to be. I think that social interaction is very important. And also, my kids miss their friends. They miss their teachers. But also, what we're planning on doing is sitting down with our children and saying, okay, this is really kind of what the school day may look like. There's no, like I said, Jack, there's no recess at the beginning of school day. You got to go to your classroom. And again, that's my family decision, but the way we're handling it as a family is we're going to sit down with our children. My children are going to be in 5th grade, 2nd grade, and we have a 3-year-old. So this schedule as well really puts a burden on my family. My wife is a nurse, so it's difficult. And we're looking for ways that we can make it work as well. But we're planning on this weekend sitting down and actually having a conversation with our children. We already know what the answer is going to be, but that's our plan for the weekend.
From Amy Bodema, what will recess look like?
This is, again, something I need to clarify for my son and my daughter. Recess will be with their class. There will be no intermixing. So I'll take my son, for example, if he's going to be in 2nd grade, there won't be a recess where he's going to go out and intermix with another class. We're going to keep the classes contained for recess as best we can. And then they will go out. We're going to try to limit the amount of shared objects. And we use Playworks. That's going to help. It has helped us with some of this for recess. And one of the questions is, are you disinfecting the playground equipment in between groups? We have heard from the health department that you're really non-porous structures. They're not too concerned about disinfecting the playground, but we will disinfect the touch points on the Wednesdays in between groups. But yeah, we're going to look at the possibility of putting up snow fences in the elementaries to say, this is your area of the playground for your class, yours the other one. I saw some schools that had reopened that, a kid would get a ball in a spot that they can play with their ball in that little spot. That just seems really terrible to me. But we will have recess, trust me. We're going to have to burn off some energy, and we're going to find ways to kids to get out to recess.
From Jessica, when will we know about volleyball for high school?
I heard that the MHSA executive committee was meeting again on August 20th. And that's, again, we're going to follow the advice of the MHSA. like every school district. I saw Lansing made a statement yesterday. We're going to wait for the MHSA to tell us.
From Heidi Koval, she has 2 parts, so I'll just read the first part and then we'll get to the second part. Will Mr. Bagley and others try to hold some classes outside whenever weather cooperates?
So we're going to try to have as many classes as possible outside, especially when the weather cooperates. PE class, we know that does need to be outside.
And knowing that this could and probably will affect the whole school year, are you already planning for what graduation activities could look like so we are more prepared for the class of 2021?
Full disclosure, haven't got to the spring yet, but we're also going to need to see what phase we're in. So yeah, we haven't gotten that far yet, but something we definitely will look at. Thank you for that.
I can say from a technical standpoint, we'll definitely be well prepared for that, for whatever comes down. So from William, is there a policy in place if a child or parent refuses to wear a mask or adhere to social distancing guidelines?
Mask, yes. I said at the board meeting, there's not going to be a debate around whether or not, if it's the policy, which we know is, it's from the government too, and there's not going to be a debate. There's not going to be we have an online option if you refuse to follow the protocol set forth.
From Melissa Kellogg, does student need to have a working camera video on computer for days of online learning? I ask this because my son's laptop camera doesn't work.
So we will have Chromebooks available for any child that needs one in the district. We are starting the year 6-12, 1-to-1, and then rolling them out through K-5 as well.
Okay.
Which is fantastic. And I just want to say thank you to everybody, our community, for supporting our sinking fund, which will help us get to 1-to-1 district-wide very quickly, and also working on our HVAC very quickly, actually right now, changing filters and doing some other things that we're going to look at massive improvements for our infrastructure.
Question from B. I know we cannot know who might test positive, but will we be able to know what grade is affected at least?
Absolutely. It will be, we will tell people what class, it will be that, this classroom, if it's Lindsay Newton, who doesn't, is a principal, but in that classroom, it will come. Like I said, when we send a lice letter home, it'll be the same thing. And I use the lice letter. That's usually something that's like, parents get it and we go, okay, wow, put your hair up, do whatever. And we have usually an emotional reaction to that. The emotional reaction to the positive COVID case, I think, is going to be obviously strong.
From B, would you, I think the answer to this one's going to be yes, but I'll let you expand on it. Would you like donations of Clorox wipes and hand sanitizer when possible?
Lindsay, you want to handle that one? Absolutely. We will have forms coming out for donations. I can say this, that is amazing. Our community has always been amazing in supporting. We started ordering stuff for the school year in May. I want to be very clear. We've been ahead of the game. Anyone that tried to order things from July on, it's not happening. That's why we feel confident. We have our PPE, we have our supplies. Some things are kind of coming in spurts, but man, we went for it. We knew there was going to be a backlog, supply chain issues, and we're ready for what we need for those portions, but we will always take supplies.
From Melissa Kellogg, you mentioned high school band, but not middle school band. Is the outside option same for both? And also, will band be taught online?
Yes, yes, and yes. Band will remain constant for whatever phase or whatever we have to do. Mr. Matusik has also done some great online collaborative work that he was telling me about it, how you can basically perform a concert from individualized uploads from videos. We have a lot of creative ways to do this. I will state right now that our co-curricular, these classes are very important. We will find a way to make them work for children in whatever setting we're in.
Okay. A real quick note, as we get close to the end here, if there are any questions that we don't get to, we will take those down and try and get them answered by email, or we'll post them on the FAQ when available. Next question from Amy Bodema. Is there going to be freshman orientation for those who choose hybrid?
As soon as we get our declarations, our choices made, then we will announce all of these portions that come out. Again, we need to know numbers to see exactly what we can do. We will have orientations. We're really paying close attention to our transition years, our 4th grade, our 6th grade, and our 9th grade. They really don't have relationships formed at that school. So we're looking at creative ways to make sure that we can make sure that those students feel welcome and also form relationships, because that's always the biggest part. 6th grade, we have 6th grade camps so that everybody kind of gets together and knows each other. But also with that, know that all extracurriculars and field trips are not allowed for the year. So yes, but that will come.
Okay. From Melissa Kellogg, what items do the kids need to bring to school for themselves? Their own wipes, own writing tools, own sanitizer, etc.?
So we will send out a list for return to school. But what we're really planning on doing is that we know that people are in different situations for what they can provide for the beginning of the school year. We've always, like at the elementaries, been able to, everybody says, what's my back to school return list? Well, here in Parchment, we're trying to provide you with what you need. We are going to greatly, one thing that's there as well is that we don't want personal items coming to the school. We want to limit that. So we're basically going to have like a elementary student will have a box that stays there and we can disinfect and keep that. We don't have to share items. So this will be something that's a little different this year, that we want everybody to have uniform school sanctioned things so we don't share. That'll come out later.
Okay, no name on this one, but do you foresee any issues with having a large influx of students wanting to return to in-person learning at trimester?
I can tell you we've gone through all these scenarios, and yeah, if we do, we do. And then we'll have to, the thing about 612 is we're probably not going to be changing our staffing model to have the remote learning option. At K5, what could happen is that if we do have an influx, everything's going great, look, it's good, then we would be consolidating our remote teaching so that teacher would come back to a face-to-face setting. And then if that happened, then those children could actually maybe stay with that teacher in the face-to-face classroom. So what we have here is a model, I want to reemphasize this, that's highly adaptable, flexible, and nimble, to be able to meet demand for these portions.
From Jen Williams, will the special education department be reaching out to families with IEP/504 plans to review how these plans will be accommodated based on chosen option, or should parents be reaching out to staff?
We have a protocol and procedure for exactly that. Our special education department is phenomenal, and they will be reaching out to families. We have to do revisions to the choice that's made. So yes, that is quite an undertaking, and school staff will be reaching out to you.
No name to this one. Actually, it's a comment, and I've seen a few of these, and it's people just who are really appreciative of the work that everyone is doing. So big thumbs up to everyone. Let me make sure I'm not missing a question in here.
I do see that. Will these be recording? Yes, we are recording. We recorded last night's, and we will be uploading those to the calendar event so that you can watch them if they weren't there.
Yep. Next question from Sabrina. Will plexiglass surround the desks in the classrooms?
Fantastic question. Since we are accommodating for at least 6 foot social distancing, we are not going to be surrounding the desks with plexiglass. That's a big deal. Because let's say we were 5 days face to face and we had 24 children in the classroom. We're planning on having 12 to 15 children in the classroom where we can guarantee, especially at the thinking about elementary, having that distance where the plexiglass is not needed. And so that's the kind of tipping point, because if we did come back with 24 children in the classroom, again, I don't think that's wise, my personal, then we would be having plexiglass barriers around everybody as well.
Next question, it may be the last one here. Will the autism/resource classrooms still be integrating into gen ed classrooms throughout the day? Oh, I got one more.
So that is a very specific one that we've talked with. So let me explain this. Our ASD, autism spectrum disorder classrooms, are run through KRESA. We house them, and we will be continuing to house our ASD classes in the school. That really is a KRESA decision. But we do have to have access to gen ed like peers, and we will be working very hard to make sure our ASD students have that exposure to the gen ed classroom. So the details of that are out, but yes, we do want to do that. We do.
Okay, actually, I think I missed one question here. It's with sixth grade. It's from Rochelle Dragoo. With sixth grade camp canceled, are there thoughts of doing this in the seventh grade year?
We have not thought, and just very honest, we haven't thought that far out. And with that being said, I want to bring attention to one part of our plan. We're very concerned about, curriculum, scope and sequence, content. More important to us and our values in the Parchment School District, and I can say this for all of our staff, is the social emotional welfare and well-being of children. Our first couple weeks of school, folks, are going to be, how are you doing? We love you. Get a relationship. How are things? How can I help? How can I support you from a social emotional standpoint? Just as much as content. We're going to be looking at baseline assessments when we come in to see what the learning loss has been, where children are, and basically every child in our district is going to get an ED, an educational development plan, where we can individualize instruction based on their needs. And we've talked about this before, but we want to accelerate. We could spend the entire year remediating. We want to accelerate. We want exposure to high quality, rigorous content. And really, if we think about a full virtual world, that's harder to deliver on. And with our in-face days, we have phenomenal educators in every organization, in every group. Our parapros, our teachers, our secretaries, every single person in our school is committed. And I also want to pay attention to the fact that our educators are planning for 5 scenarios. That's not easy. What our plan does is allows us to work very hard on our remote instructional capabilities. Our face-to-face is going to be intense, it's going to be different, and it's going to be new. So when we get that baseline information, we'll be communicating with parents, hey, this is where we are, and we want to see growth from here. We can differentiate instruction based on that. We're basically taking an educational system and, I don't want to say blowing it up, taking the foundational parts, but reinventing an educational system. I could not be more proud of the work of our people who have been here unwavering on their commitment to children. We're not going to be perfect with everything we do, but what we are going to be perfect with, not perfect, what we are going to be great with is making sure that our kids and you know that they're loved. And you're going to have a close personal relationship with our school district. And so we talk a lot about all the other stuff, but just as important when we get these children face to face is our mental health, our social emotional, and knowing that a kid, my daughter the other day saw one of her friends for the first time in a long time, and they ran up to each other and stopped and said, "Can I hug you?" And they're like, "Can we hug?" And they think about how much our worlds have changed, where a teacher is going to be, it's going to be so difficult where you come into an elementary classroom or somewhere, you give a handshake or a fist bump, but children that want to be hugged, the side hug, the touch, those type of things, we really need to pay attention to what this tool has done on a lot of us from a social emotional standpoint as well. So that was a huge off. We will remain committed to giving children the experiences that they either A, missed or desire to the best of our ability. If we need to look at that for our sixth graders who missed out on it, we will. But I don't have an answer for that right now.
And I think that was all the questions from the chat. I did omit some of the good words for all the staff, but any staff that are on the Zoom call now, if you look through the chat, some good words of encouragement in there, and I know we all appreciate those. But just to make sure we got to all the questions, I left those out. We had some really good questions. Lindsay posted the email address, so if you have any further questions, you can send your questions there, and they'll come back as soon as possible. And I'll turn it over to you to close it out.
Okay, I do want to say thank you to everybody again. I'm not sure how many people we had on the call. We had quite a few last night. I'll tell you one of the fastest ways to get in touch with me, and I'll do this, and I had a lot last night, is that if you have direct questions, if you could email me your question and then a number to get a hold of you, that's usually the fastest way, is just to pick up the phone and call for a lot of these portions. So I'm committed to that as the district superintendent. But also the questions at parchmentschools.org, those will get disseminated right to the spot where they need to be for a quick return on answers. We know this is not an easy decision, but we're here to help support you in anything that you may need in making that decision. And we look forward to a great school year. That we know one thing that's constant is that things will change. So we feel ready to facilitate the change at the drop of a hat, but also know that's a very uncomfortable position to be in as a parent and as an educator. So I want to be very transparent on that. And thank you.
Thanks, everybody.